UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Superwoman Suella Braverman has finally had enough of illegal migrants gaming modern slavery laws. But will a bombshell new plan endorsed by the Home Secretary prevent invaders from slipping through the cracks? And does globalist Rishi Sunak really have the balls to leave the ECHR? I'll explore that in my digest next before I get the thoughts of my superstar panel. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda DeLucy. The years-long Cold War between Harry, Meghan and the royal family is about to explode following the release of this shameful trailer for their even more shameful reality show.
The hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race.
It's a dirty game.
So, as they attempt to destroy the life's work of the late Queen Elizabeth II, should the Sussexes be stripped of their royal titles? Royal biographers Angela Levin and Dr. Tessa Dunlop battle it out in the clash at 9:20. And sticking with royal drama, as almost 50,000 of you sign a petition supporting her, should the palace reinstate Lady Susan Hussey, given what we now know about her racism accuser Ngozi Fulani? Well, the author, journalist and society insider Petronella Wyatt, who's known Lady Hussey since she was 18, comes to her defence at 10:20. As he outrageously blames care home staff for spreading COVID, are Matt Hancock's pandemic diaries a fantasy? Civil liberties advocate Matt Letizia weighs in on that, and Witty and Valence's U-turn on lockdown hums. He's live with me at 10:40. As Shamima Begum's jihadi husband insists they were happily married, despite her claims she was groomed and trafficked, has her main argument for restoring her UK citizenship just crumbled? That's our big debate at 10 p.m. After the chairman of the BBC finally admits the corporation has a liberal bias and hits out at the likes of hard-left broadcaster Emily Maitlis, is the Beeb no longer fit for purpose? Lawrence Fox explores in the Fox Report at 9:35. And as Oxfordshire motorists face curbs on where they can drive under chilling new plans by the country's wokest council, is this Britain's first climate lockdown? Neil Oliver explores at 9:50. Plus, Angela Rayner is in the House. But should she be in the House of Commons with this kind of behaviour? Oh, embarrassing. We'll debate in the media buzz coming up, along with tomorrow's newspaper front pages and a brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. So my opinion in just a moment, but you know we do the news first. So here are the GB News headlines at 9 with Tatiana Sanchez.
Dan, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The RMT has announced further strikes across Network Rail over the Christmas period. The union says rail staff will walk out from 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve until 6 a.m. on the 27th of December, with next week's strikes going ahead as planned. It said it will put the latest offer from Network Rail to its members with a recommendation to reject, claiming the deal will lead to unsafe practices. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says it's very disappointing the RMT hasn't played its part in continuing talks instead of holding strikes.
We've made sure that there was a new improved pay offer, which I think is fair to RMT members. What is disappointing is the fact that the RMT not only have not called off strikes, they've actually called more strikes for the Christmas period, and I would urge them to call those strikes off, put this pay deal to their members with a recommendation that it be accepted.
GB News understands an 8th child has died after contracting Strep A. It follows a 12-year-old child being the first secondary school student to have died after contracting the invasive infection. The UK Health Security Agency confirmed a single case was identified at Colf School in South London. Downing Street is urging parents to be on the lookout for symptoms and says there's no shortages of antibiotics. More than 850 cases were reported in the week starting the 14th of November, compared to over 180 for the same period last year. The government says changes to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will place local communities at the heart of the planning system. Further amendments will be set out by the Levelling Up Department tomorrow. The government is also set to abolish compulsory house building targets following requests from the Conservative MPs aiming to protect the environment. Supporters of the proposals say this would also ensure local communities aren't forced to accept unwelcome development. Alongside new measures in the bill, the government will also give councils the power to refuse further planning permission. Downing Street says it's confident the UK has sufficient energy supplies ahead of temperatures severely set to drop this week. A cold weather alert has been issued for England with severe conditions forecast from 6 p.m. Wednesday to next Monday. A yellow warning for snow has also been issued for northern Scotland, with temperatures expected to fall to as low as -10 overnight. Healthcare services are urging people to protect vulnerable and high-risk groups. And the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has declared the beginning of the festive period in Parliament with the lighting of a Christmas tree. MPs, peers and parliamentary staff were joined by the Rock Choir, who sang Christmas songs, including Carol of the Bells, which is based on a Ukrainian folk song. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Another bloody report about the invasion of 44,000 via our southern border, which I have been describing on this show for over a year as a national emergency that could finish off the Conservative Party for a generation. I get it. Your response is probably the same as mine. Stop pontificating and start taking action. But today's proposals from the Centre for Policy Studies by Theresa May's former Downing Street Chief of Staff Nick Timothy are a significant hint that this Tory government might finally be starting to understand that only dramatic action has any hope of tampering this clear and present danger before the next election. The report has been at least partially endorsed by the Home Secretary Suella Braverman, a decision believed to have been approved by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who is so far naively relying on Emmanuel Macron and France to solve this crisis for him. So the key suggestions are for entire nationalities to be banned from using the Modern Slavery Act to stay in Britain when there is proof the law is being unscrupulously abused. Currently, there is an abundance of evidence that such abuse is being used by Albanians to stay in the UK in perpetuity, housed in four-star hotels, by the way, paid for by you and me, while their claims are held up in the system. As the report states, while this has been happening on a small scale for years, it has now become standard advice to illegal immigrants from Albania to claim to be the victims of trafficking. Indeed, modern slavery legislation has become the first line of defence for many illegal immigrants, with the ECHR, European Convention on Human Rights, as their fallback position. As a result, the report also agrees we must leave the ECHR to allow the detention of and processing of asylum claims to take place offshore. Another policy I have been advocating on this show for many months. Indeed, the report suggests the government should be doing more Rwanda-style deals with other countries and adds critically, for those coming to the country illegally and for those travelling from safe countries, we recommend new laws preventing migrants from ever settling in Britain. And according to the Times newspaper tonight, Suella is planning just that. They say she's in the process of drawing up legislation to make it easier to reject and remove asylum seekers from Albania by using a government whitelist of safe countries. Existing legislation states that a Home Office official must make a decision as to whether each claim relating to the asylum seeker from a safe country is, quote, clearly unfounded. However, under this proposed change, claims would be automatically refused without the need for an official. Now, of course, we know that Superwoman Suella believes we need to leave the ECHR too in order to stop the boat. She said as much during her campaign to become Tory leader this summer before accepting the job as Home Secretary under both Truss and then Sunak.
Seen firsthand that we can't fix the problem of illegal migration because of human rights claims and because of an interventionist, politicised foreign court in Strasbourg, which is intervening to thwart our domestic policies, as we saw last month on the Rwanda flight. And I'm afraid the only solution to this problem, and if we want to be honest with the British people, on delivering on Brexit, on taking back control over our borders, is that we do now need to leave the European Convention of Human Rights. I've pledged that, and I challenge all my fellow candidates to make that similar pledge.
Suella knows the solution. This report by Nick Timothy knows the solution. Now it's up to the Prime Minister, Sunak, to show he has the balls not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk to hell with what his globalist mates think. Because the idea that his government will be re-elected while allowing tens of thousands to stream into the UK illegally each year and then be unable to be sent back to their safe country, costing us £2 billion annually, is fanciful. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. So, Belinda, I know this is an issue that you're equally passionate about, given, of course, you had a whole political career to honour Brexit. And what was the biggest pledge made during the Brexit campaign? We would take back control of our borders. That hasn't happened. Is this report today and is this news from the Times tonight a sign that maybe the government is starting to realise that dramatic action is needed?
Oh, we've heard all their plans before. Listening to the Conservatives on immigration and controlling our borders is like watching a room of Pinocchios and their noses growing. It's all talk.
But Suella wants to do it.
Yes, but so did Pretty. And it doesn't matter because the machinery of the Conservative Party, our civil service and as long as we're members of the European Court of Human Rights. Nothing is possible. The Conservatives have the tools. They don't have the political will. Now, the Modern Slavery Act, with this loophole which allows Albanians to claim asylum, this could have been closed months ago when we saw Albanians coming first, crossing our shores, but they chose not to do it. They could leave the ECHR. They choose not to do it. The Conservatives don't want to reduce immigration, and I think the British public are fed up being conned, being treated as fools over this. I do not believe a single word coming out of the Conservative Party. I know Suella may have good intentions, but I think she knows that the Conservative Party does not have the spine to make the big decisions, which is why you see them tinkering around the edges all the time.
Carol, that's why I found this report from Nick Timothy today so fascinating, because, of course, he was Theresa May's chief of staff. The modern slavery legislation is hers, and he admits it has now been blatantly disregarded and misused, abused, I would actually say, by the illegal arrivals from Albania.
And, Belinda touched on it there. I think Suella has always known what the solution is, and I think she's been telling government what the solution is the whole time she's been in this job. But they're not listening to her because Rishi is treading carefully. It goes without saying that safe countries anyone from a safe country should not be able to apply to stay in this country. And we've known that about Albania for a long time. I even read there was a little nib in one of the papers this week that was talking about. It said that the government had been talking about turning the boats back, which is the only thing that will stop everything, by the way. And they had now cast that to one side and they weren't going to be talking about it anymore. That is the one thing to do, because once people get here, we know the way our system works, that they will be here for years. We know that the system processes one person in our immigration offices, they process one person a week. So the 44,000 that have arrived this year, they won't be processed for the next 4 or 5 years. So the only way to stop it is to turn the boats back. And for some bizarre reason, they won't do that. Suella said today, she said, I'm committed to doing whatever it takes. Well, so far, all we've done is put an extra 9 million on top of the 53 billion we gave to Macron last year so that his French officers can have fags on the beach and just smoke and not do anything and watch them get on the boats. So that's all that they've done. All this talk, all these promises, and that's all that they've actually done.
Benjamin, can even a bleeding heart lefty like you...
Welcome back, by the way. Welcome back, by the way.
...concede that we can't accept these tens of thousands from Albania, a safe country, a NATO country? Can you concede that?
I mean, Albania's a lovely country. I've been. I would say that it's definitely not at war. In fact, it's a slightly boring country, so maybe they want to come here for a bit of excitement. I think the one thing where Rishi Sunak is right, and Liz Truss said this and she was right, is that actually we should have more immigration. I want people from Albania to be coming to this country, but they should...
More immigration?
Yes, absolutely.
We've had 504,000.
We have a massive shortage of people to fill jobs in this country.
We've had record levels, though.
We've had record levels, and we still don't have enough. But the problem is that...
That's 504,000 net migration, by the way. Actually,
it is, yes.
More than a million arriving in the country, and you don't think that's enough?
No, and many of them were from Ukraine and Afghanistan, so they probably won't stay for that long.
Well, 100,000 were. That's still 400,000.
No, it's not, because 250,000 of them are students. But getting back to the question about Albania, the problem is the route in which they're coming. And so when these people are being exploited by gangmasters who are putting them into slavery, it is modern slavery.
Oh, no, they would want to go home.
How they're treated.
What slavery?
There needs to be legal routes for these people to come into...
But that doesn't address... Right, the asylum process in this country and system costs the taxpayer £2.1 billion a year. That's the same as it would cost for 62,000 nurses. This is unsustainable for the British taxpayer. We cannot...
But Belinda...
They are... I'm sorry, Benjamin, but the answer to, we're having a bit of a dodgy time in our economy, let's open the borders, you're throwing all the millions of Brits who don't work and are on benefits onto the rubbish heap instead of inspiring them to work.
Actually, before you respond, Benjamin, can I just ask one question, though? Do you not just accept, and this is something I think the left have really failed to understand about Brexit, do you not just accept, actually, as Brits, we made a democratic decision. We don't want immigration at that level. We don't care that the establishment tells us that we should, that lefty politicians tells us that we should, that business leaders tell us that we should have that many people so they can pay people low wages. As Brits, we have said enough is enough. We want to lower immigration.
That's quite the rewriting of history, because the Vote Leave campaign was very clear throughout that this wasn't about immigration.
Well, it was definitely on the list.
It was about having the choice and the power to do it yourself, which is a very different question. And the truth is there are no legal routes for these people to come into the country. What would be responsible is to have them apply to be economic migrants. And I'd just say on Belinda's point, where she's absolutely right about the hideous cost, it's never been higher, but the cost of a 4-star hotel per night is more than the cost of a lawyer for the day. So why aren't we hiring more staff to process?
Final word, Carol.
The bottom line is there's a YouGov poll recently that said 84% of people in this country are really unhappy with the way this government is handling immigration. So that's the bottom line. If the Tories want to get elected next time, they've got to fix this problem.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, that is with legal immigration and illegal immigration. I think they're unhappy with both. Carol Malone, the return of Benjamin Butterworth, and Belinda DeLucy, thank you all so much. My superstar panel are with me all night. But coming up, as the chairman of the BBC finally admits the corporation is biased, is the beam no longer fit for purpose? Lawrence Fox analyses in the Fox Report at 9:35. But first, with the explosive trailer for their Netflix show amounting to a declaration of war, should Harry and Meghan be stripped of their titles by King Charles? I say yes, but after the break, royal biographers Angela Levin and Dr. Tessa Dunlop duke it out. I want to know what you think too. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle @gbnews. The results coming up after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Time now for The Clash. Despite the numerous olive branches that King Charles and Queen Camilla have extended, Harry and Meghan have proven they're hell-bent on destroying the very institution that gave them a platform, as well as the late Queen Elizabeth's legacy, with a new trailer today for their Netflix reality show that's as savage as you'd expect from the Cullis couple. Look.
It's really hard to look back on it now and go, what on earth happened?
You hear that? That is the sound of hearts breaking all around the world.
She's becoming a royal rock star.
And then everything changed. There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race. It's a dirty game. The pain and suffering of women marrying into this institution, this feeding frenzy.
I realized they're never going to protect you.
I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself. No one knows the full truth.
So while a reconciliation is seemingly out of the question thanks to this vile show, which will rock the monarchy in just 3 days' time, should King Charles now man up and strip Harry and Meghan of their royal titles once and for all? What do you think? Dan at gbnews.uk, our poll running at GBNews on Twitter. Fascinated to know the results on this. To help you make your mind up, though, I'm joined by the woman who literally wrote the book on Prince Harry. She got huge access to the Duke of Sussex as well, the royal biographer Angela Levin, and the author of Elizabeth and Philip, A Story of Young Love, Marriage and Monarchy, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Great to have you both here. Angela Levin, I strongly believe now King Charles can't just hold back any longer. He has to take decisive action, Angela. He's got to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles. Otherwise, they are making a fool out of him and the monarchy.
Yes, but it's very complicated. They can get rid of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but it's very difficult, I think impossible, to get rid of Prince Harry. He was born a prince, and you can't actually take that away. But if he's left with the prince, then Meghan becomes Princess Harry or Princess Henry, which is what is on his birth certificate. So I think you have to weigh up what's the best thing to do. It's very, very difficult. I think he must be absolutely destroyed. He's always loved Harry. He's got on with him very close. Harry was always the one to sort out any rows and calm things over. And now he's turned into such an unpleasant, nasty person. I think it's very sad because when I spent a lot of time with him, as you mentioned, he was full of energy, full of beans. He was very intuitive. He was very good with people, just like his mother. And he didn't really moan. He would get irritable, but that's all right. We all get irritable. But now all the worst in him has been brought out by his wife, Meghan, in my view.
Tessa Dunlop, you say they shouldn't be stripped of their titles. Why? They clearly hate the royal family, Tessa. Why on earth do they want to cling to this institution that they think is so awful?
I've just been on the other side of Europe, and I think we need to sit back and look at how this is playing out internationally. Our monarchy has always been a global brand and one historically we've been proud of and that's worked for us. And at the moment, our soap opera, our clash, the front pages of our pretty often, in fact, sordid papers are being plastered all over news headlines. And what we're not understanding is that in many ways, yeah, this is a domestic feud, but it's also an institution of state that has long needed reform. Harry and Meghan are not impartial. They're not without their agenda. They're the least appropriate people in many ways to be calling out the need for reform. But we have to fall on our swords, and you included, Dan Wootton and Angela, as part of the Fourth Estate, for actually not insisting on change within this institution.
No. You've got it completely wrong. What happened is when the Queen was aging, she didn't want change. No older person like her want huge change. Charles was very receptive to this, and he respected his mother.
He wanted them to be at the heart of his new slimmed-down monarchy. They didn't give him a chance.
Yeah, but
we're talking about broad, sweeping changes that needed to be made. When Philip married Elizabeth, he was treated appallingly. He was very depressed. He had to shut up and put up. He couldn't be doing with the suits. But in the end, the system always wins. And guess what? Our beloved late Queen was in her late 90s. It's not an ideal age for the CEO of a company. And all she had to do in the wake of Diana's death was nod at that hearse, and she was our favourite grandmother again. Understandably so, but we need to separate our emotion from the Queen.
Tessa, can I ask you a question?
Also recognise that this is our institution of state that we pay for.
Prince Philip said that actually there is a lot of change from the royal family and the way it works, but it's done very delicately so as not to make a fuss and to cause trouble. But loads of things were changed over the years, quietly and carefully.
Also, Tessa, there was also a huge desire from within the monarchy and within Buckingham Palace to make changes from Harry and Meghan. I was covering it very closely at the time. But can I ask you a question, Tessa, given you are a supporter of Harry and Meghan, and I respect that. Do you understand...
No, Dan Wootton, this is a classic misinformation. I don't support either side. I'm a historian. I'm just explaining to you how it's playing out. Harry and Meghan are boxed in a corner. They've got to make money. The Duke of Windsor would have done the same if the platforms had been available to him. So we're going to see more of this. The only real winner here, by the way, is Netflix. But I'm saying, isn't it a shame that, for example, Buckingham Palace, the centre point, not just of the British monarchy, but actually the Commonwealth, employs less than 10% ethnic minorities in a city that's 44% ethnic minority, that people like Lady Hussey wander along after 60 years in royal service and guff up in the way that she did last week. These things are not a surprise. Harry and Meghan are a blunt tool. They're a blunt tool for fighting.
You don't know what happened.
And I think the treatment of Lady Hussey has been really terrible, actually. But let me pose my question to you, Tess, because you didn't give me a chance. Do you accept that there were certain things that Harry and Meghan did during their time in the royal family that made them unpopular, both with people within the institution and the British public? Do you accept that their actions, their behaviour had anything to do with why public opinion changed? Or do you sign up to their thesis that it's all down to the terrible media and the terrible public?
Dear Dan, it doesn't work well for your black and white clash, but these issues are always grey. Of course, she came with Californian pretensions. She was a celebrity marrying into the British institution of celebrity, the ultimate institution of celebrity, which is modern monarchy. And yeah, she had her agenda, and I don't think she would have ever lasted in the royal family.
Okay, good. I'm glad you admit that. I'm glad you admit that.
Was not fit. It was not fit for purpose.
No, but she didn't want. She did not try. She did not try. She never wanted it to work, Angela, did she? That's the point. And I'm glad you admit that, Tessa. She never wanted it to work. She came in to prove a point, Angela.
She thought that she would come in and be on the same level as William and Catherine. And we saw in the trailer this afternoon that you say, you know, there is a hierarchy. Well,
no sugar, Sherlock.
You know, for goodness sake. And she pretended she didn't know the anthem. She pretended all sorts of things. She was an innocent in a...
I mean, Tessa, come on. What a bombshell from Harry. The royal family's a hierarchical organisation. Exactly. Shock horror.
Indeed, but now we're lowering ourselves to their levels. mudslinging. What I'm saying to you is, Dan,
Well, they're slinging the mud. They're slinging the mud at their own father, at their own flesh and blood.
You can't let them get away with it. So let me speak too. You can't let them get away with it. And also, if you don't reply, then they win. They're telling so many lies that you have to actually correct them. And I hope that William said that, I believe William has said that he will correct them when they make errors.
I hope he does.
And they have to do that. They have to be...
Sorry, Tessa, we'll let you respond now.
Yeah, I just think, first of all, the mudslinging doesn't work. The Fourth Estate, the press, it relies on access to the royal family. So you get hagiographies, you get obsequious behaviour, you don't get decent interrogation of their recruitment processes, of the obescent throng of royal snobs that James Pope Hennessy identified in the 1950s. We need to strip that away. There needs to be proper, decent, thorough, just as in any institution of state, transparent procedures that don't exist. Harry and Meghan are a sideshow. In the end, the broad shoulders of monarchy can resist them. But if we go down to their level and sling mud at them, then we are reducing our monarchy to little more than celebrity trash. And I ask you to resist. And I also ask you for fairer, more balanced coverage. Both you and Angela. I follow you on Twitter. I saw your faux placing of the flowers. I read Angela's book. There needs to be balance. There is no baddie and goodie here.
Well, what do you think we're doing here? What do you think we're doing here? And I'm sorry that if you think that me paying tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II has anything to do with my discussion about Harry and Meghan. Tessa, I covered Harry and Meghan's time in the royal family. I was the first person to actually break the fact that the Queen had expressed displeasure to Prince Harry about Meghan's behaviour, and that started this ball rolling. But I agree with you that the royal family has to be covered diligently and with some force, actually, by journalists, and that is always what I do. Absolutely. Honestly, Tessa, go back and read the columns that I wrote about Meghan when she first entered the royal family. I could not have been more of a champion of that woman. What changed? Maybe her bullying of staff, maybe the fact that she had a plan the whole time to destroy the royal family, and maybe the way she treated her own flesh and blood, the Markles, who are actually good people. I had no agenda. I looked at the facts and I went with them as a journalist.
Neither did I. I was fortunate to be one of the key presenters for CNN when they got married. I worked from 4 a.m.
this is Prince Harry's literal biographer.
And it was fantastic.
She had no agenda. She had a positive agenda.
And I thought she was wonderful for a few weeks.
But look, I'm delighted.
But just finally, you're reducing it to personality.
King Charles,
it's an institution
they are personalities,
of
for goodness sake. No, I'm not trying to do it objectively. I'm doing it subjectively because these are people. They're saying things. They're being very cruel to people they should not be cruel to, who they should respect.
Yeah, and can I just make the final point, Tessa? They were going to release this despicable attack on the royal family when the Queen was alive, knowing that she was suffering from a terminal illness. Now, I think that says a lot about them. But Tessa Dunlop, Angela Levin, fascinating debate, both brilliant royal authors, and I really appreciate you having it out tonight. So who do you agree with? Should the Sussexes be stripped of their titles in light of their Netflix show? Andrew on Twitter says there are so many reasons why they should be stripped of their titles. The unbelievable damage they are causing to the royal family is extraordinary, and the King should put a stop to this now. Wayne on Twitter says they have been making money off the back of the monarchy for far too long now, and it needs to stop. And Patricia on email says, I was all for the stripping of their royal titles. After all, they hate the royal institution. But then I heard that Harry would automatically revert back to his birth title of Prince, and Meghan would gain a princess title, in which case definitely not. And Angela did make that point earlier on. Your verdict is now, and wow, 92% of you agree that Harry and Meghan should be stripped of their titles, just 8% want them to be allowed to keep them. Coming up, as Oxfordshire's Lefty County Council plans new lockdowns for motorists to save the planet. Would the screen insanity become the norm under a Keir Starmer government? Neil Oliver weighs in at 9:50. But first, as the corporation's chairman admits its liberal bias and hits out at the likes of hard-left broadcaster Emily Maitlis, is his admission grounds for defunding the BBC? Lawrence Fox with the Fox Report straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time now for the Fox Report with Lawrence Fox, and BBC Chairman Richard Sharp has finally confirmed what the rest of us has known for a long time and denounced the corporation's former Darlene hard-left broadcaster Emily Maitlis in the process by admitting in a Sunday Times exclusive that the Beeb is guilty of a, quote, liberal bias, claiming he was fighting against impartiality from the inside. He conceded that the Liberal Lovey Maitlis was wrong for airing her personal views prior to her exit, especially during her partisan Newsnight coverage of Dominic Cummings. Here's a reminder of the lowlights from Maitlis.
Good evening. Dominic Cummings broke the rules. The country can see that, and it shocked the government cannot. But despite the resignation of one minister, growing unease from his backbenchers, a dramatic early warning from the polls, and a deep national disquiet, Boris Johnson has chosen to ignore it. Tonight we consider what this blind loyalty tells us about the workings of Number 10. When it comes to excess deaths, Britain's currently a world leader. Is that really something to be proud of? These are your words.
Sorry, have you worked this out between you? No, it's just what a lot of people think about it. It's just what a lot of people think about it.
You're writing about what this great betrayal it is, that all Brexiteers are portrayed as racist. It is consistent, casual racism.
That's not casual racism
week
at all.
after week from
it's
you.
Not casual
That's what you
whatsoever.
trade in. What is it then? I just wonder, when it's so consistent, when it's week after week, the bile that you spew up has to be who you are.
A left-wing bias, Lawrence Fox? How on earth did he work that out?
Oh, it's magic, Dan, isn't it? It's absolutely insane. One wonders whether Emily Maitlis, whether she was not employed by the BBC, would ever get a job anywhere ever again, even doing a paper round. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yes,
it's
I do.
absolutely bonkers that this lady has the platform that she does, and you know, you see what happened to Piers Morgan after he walked off GMB in his little fluff of anger, and no one watches what he's got to say anymore. And I think Emily Maitlis should put herself out to the subscription model and see if anyone watches what she's got to say, because I think she doesn't represent anything that anyone in this country thinks at all, ever, except people that live just off Upper Street.
No, I completely agree. But what's so ridiculous, I think, about this comment from the BBC chairman, Lawrence, is that it's not as if the BBC sacked Maitlis. They allowed her to do all of this stuff. They gave her a couple of very mild slap on the wrist, and then she left them to go to the Labour Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as LBC.
I mean, look, the whole of the mainstream media, and this is why GB News is so good, the whole of the mainstream media just buy into this rubbish. And thankfully, we now have a channel that will actually tell people the news, the truth, and will discuss this stuff. Because, you know, Emily Maitlis, Piers Morgan, any of these people, the Beth Rigbys of this world, who are just the most monstrous hypocrites in journalism, need to just be told, okay, go make your money somewhere else. See how that works for you. That's what I think. And you know, it's sad to see a wonderful national institution like the BBC so utterly corrupted by this horrible wokery. I think it's just a real tragedy.
No, I agree. And it was a wonderful national institution. It no longer is. And so as a result, we should not be forced to fund it, because that's what makes me so angry, Lawrence. It's actually illegal to watch GB News on a television set if you refuse to pay the licence fee. And I mean, that is just the most outdated. It's actually a fascist model, really, when you think about it.
It is. You know, I mean, North Korean state TV is more fun, as I've said to you several times before. I think that the BBC have a monopoly, which we don't agree with in this country. We're not up for the BBC taxing someone 157 quid or whatever it is. I don't pay it, I don't watch it, and I don't listen to it. But I tell you one thing I do know, and that is that I know someone very, very, very powerful within the Radio 4 Today programme. And they have said to me that the lunatics are running the asylum. And that is what I've been told.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Look, Lawrence, from the sublime to the ridiculous, right, I have to talk to you about the Christmas staple, Love Actually. Because have you been following this, Lawrence? It's come under fire because its own writer, Richard Curtis, claimed the film's lack of diversity made him feel uncomfortable and a bit stupid. And then Jeremy Vine took things a lot further, deciding to share with his viewers all of the red flags in the very white movie made 2 decades ago. Watch.
The first red flag, you could say, as we said, red flag number one, why is nearly everyone white? And we have to ask this question, which is he clearly a stalker, right? OK, next one. Let's have a look. Another red flag. Red flag, all the couples are straight, where are the gay characters? Natalie, there's a red flag here. A lot of comments about her in the movie being overweight, or just jokes about her being chubby or whatever. Why the fat shaming? The bigger issue, which we haven't even mentioned, is this one. Why do the women in Love Actually seem to be like the Stepford Wives, seem to be controlled by men?
Lawrence, are we seriously doing this? Is this what wokery has come to?
Richard Curtis, who's made millions of pounds off the back of his films, has now decided that he realises that the alligator is going to eat him too, because he is, in woke parlance, a white supremacist, you see. He has made a film with white people in it, which is a cardinal sin. to the woke thing. So he's tried to jump ahead and go, I've done something wrong. I should have hired, Oliver Twist to be a disabled black Ghanaian refugee. He made these terrible mistakes. And then Jeremy Vine, who I have absolutely no idea why the man is on TV. Why is he on TV? All he does is he gets a bunch of race baiters on, and they just sit there. I mean, I was on the only episode of Jeremy Vine which was pulled and is not available on demand because Yasmin Alabai, racist baiter, called me a racist on TV, and I made the stupid mistake of asking her to retract her comment. When what I should have done was be quiet and then just sued her to death over this stuff. Jeremy Vine is a cycling video on Twitter. That's all he is. That's all he is. And he doesn't represent the viewers. He doesn't represent the audiences. None of these channels represent what people actually think. And I mean, sitting there talking about white supremacy and all of this sort of stuff, it's the most divisive, horrible stuff in the world. And you know what the only form of acceptable racism in this world is nowadays? Against white people. And the only form of acceptable racism which is legislated for is against white people. So Jeremy Vine can take his red flags, stick them on the back of his bike, and go for a long bike ride and never come back on TV.
Lawrence Fox, who will be back on TV much earlier than planned because he's filling in for Farage this week. So 7 o'clock all week here on GB News. Lawrence Fox with the Fox Report. Thank you so much, Lawrence. But coming up, as her jihadi husband insists they were happily married, has Shamima Begum's claim that she was trafficked as a minor, her main argument for restoring her UK citizenship, now fallen apart. My superstar panel are going to debate these new revelations in the media buzz straight after 10. But first, as Oxfordshire motorists face restrictions on where they can drive under new plans by the country's wokest council, are we experiencing Britain's first climate lockdown? And what on earth can we do about it? Neil Oliver on this straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle,
Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
The great Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. Now, the reality of green extremism is edging ever closer, with Britain's Wokest Council introducing motoring lockdowns for thousands of people in Oxford. I promise you, when I read this last night, I thought it was a hoax, but it's real. Under the guise of reducing climate carbon emissions, Oxfordshire County Council is dividing the city into 6 specific zones, with motorists allowed to leave their own neighbourhood just 100 times a year. Averaging just 2 trips a week, Oxford residents will be forced to apply for a permit with the council if they want to drive to other areas. Their cars will be tracked by cameras all across the city, and if they visit another neighbourhood without permission or exceed their 2 trips a week, they'll be slapped with £70 fines. Now, can we just be frank about this? This is Mission Creek towards draconian climate lockdowns, which I've been raising as a real possibility now for the past 2 years, and obviously been derided and dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. But don't be surprised if the powers that be next limit your weekly consumption of meat or cut your air travel under the facade of saving the planet. Neil Oliver, I mean, what's this about? What is this really about, Neil?
This is the most laughable nonsense yet. If it wasn't deadly serious, and if it wasn't something against which we should all man the barricades, absolutely, then it would just be a joke. If the people of Oxford, if people anywhere, even hypothetically, accept this for 5 minutes, then they are whipped dogs. And anyone who would put up with this deserves whatever the overlords plan next. But I don't think the people of Britain are whipped dogs, not in the least. And this is about control. It has always been about control. You know, you and I have been saying variations on the theme of it's never about what they say it's about. And the more this progresses, the more you can see the pattern so blatantly exposed before our eyes. You know, COVID wasn't about health. You know, the war in Ukraine is not about saving democracy. And the Agenda 2030 and the rest of the green agenda are not about saving the planet. If you cannot see that the underlying plan, the blueprint beneath all of it, is simply to impose, to seize, control, impose that upon people. If you can't see that by now, then you are as desensitized as a blind cobbler's thumb. It is absolutely obvious and irrefutable that this kind of nonsense that is being suggested by the councillors or whatever in Oxford, if you can't see it for what it is, then there's no help for you. If this was proposed where I live, I swear to you, Dan, I would put rhubars on the front of my car and drive through the barriers and ram the cameras. This is beyond the pale. Just because a council, just because some trumped-up, self-appointed gauleiters make something legal does not make it lawful. There is a profound and fundamental difference between legal and lawful. This is not lawful. To curtail deliberately the freedoms of law-abiding people is not lawful. If you cast your mind back, you've seen the tapes of the David Frost interviews with Richard Nixon after he had resigned as President of the United States, and Frost asked him if what he had done in sanctioning the burglary of the Watergate building was against the law. Nixon said, if the president does it, then it's legal. And the same thought carries through here. Just because these people say that what they propose to do is legal and that therefore the population must abide by it. No, there comes a time for free people when they have to identify, recognise and understand that what is being proposed is immoral and unlawful. And it then becomes actually the obligation of free law-abiding people to ignore, defy and throw out such attempts to impinge upon the freedom of law-abiding people.
Well, indeed, and this is why we keep hearing all of the doomsday drumbeat about the climate emergency, isn't it, Neil? Because they want to be able to justify emergency measures, just like they did unnecessarily during the COVID pandemic.
If a government can get away with murder because there's an emergency, then of course they will find reasons to say that there is an emergency, and that's what's going on here. I say that, and many people like me, and of course many people far more qualified than I am, say that what is being imposed at the moment is a climate hoax. At the very least, we are being duped into thinking that we are in some kind of catastrophic situation because of the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And because we have been brainwashed and bullied and propagandized to that effect, people are being forced to keep their heads down while all sorts of restrictions are being imposed upon their lives on the grounds that we, the human race, are destroying the planet. It is an inexcusable fraud that is being imposed upon people, and it is legitimising Agenda 2030 and the rest of it. And again, the same as COVID and the rest, it's not about what they say it's about. This is a power grab. This is about people exploiting whatever situation is at hand to take control of people's lives. Something like communism runs in the blood of the people that are behind this. They have in their heads the notion of a blueprint for what they think proles like you and me should be, how they think we should behave, how we should live, what we should do every moment of the day. And they want to sit back and watch us comply with the diktats that they're setting down. And they've got some fantasy about
communism. Are all over this.
About watching us standing on the pavements, watching the Politburo drive by in their cars. That's what they want. That's what they're about. And if any of us have any sense, we will absolutely say no.
Totally. The echoes of communism all over this. Neil Oliver, perfectly put. And Neil's back 6 p.m. on Saturday night here on GB News. But coming up, should the palace reinstate Lady Susan Hussey after 50,000 members of the public signed a petition pledging their support amid the royal race row? Author, journalist and society figure Petronella White, who's known Lady Hussey since the age of 18, gives her unfiltered take. You won't hear it anywhere else in the media. She's live with me in the studio at 10:20. But first, as Shamima Begum's jihadi husband insists they were happily married despite her claim she was groomed and trafficked, has her main argument for restoring her British citizenship just crumbled? That's our big debate in the Media Buzz straight after the break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates and strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as he blames care home staff for spreading COVID to vulnerable residents in his pandemic diaries, is Matt Hancock only interested in covering his back for unforgivable failures as Health Secretary? I take a deep dive on that, as well as Whitty and Valence's shock U-turn on lockdown harms, with Civil Liberties campaigner Matt Letizia at 10:40. Speaking of unreliable narrators, Harry and Meghan have declared all-out war on the royal family in a bombshell trailer for their revolting and impending reality show.
The hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race. It's a dirty game.
But with their fanciful claims already being debunked, can anyone trust a word the Sussexes have to say? At 10:30, I'll put that to tonight's superstar panel. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda DeLucy. Plus, as over 50,000 members of the public sign a petition supporting her, should the palace reinstate Lady Susan Hussey, given what we now know about her racism accuser Ngozi Fulani? Author, journalist and society insider Petronella Wyatt, who's known Lady Hussey since the age of 18, comes to her defence at 10:20. And has ISIS bride Shamima Begum's trafficking claim, the backbone of her case for returning to the UK, been demolished by her jihadi husband?
We agreed upon conditions of marriage.
Which were?
Basically, she asked for some freedoms.
Right, okay.
Yeah, which I agreed to give her.
We'll debate that next. Plus, can Angela Rayner be in charge after having at large? More on that, plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and the media buzz coming up this hour, plus a brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass on the way, so do stay up with us tonight. But before that, the news headlines at 10 with Tatiana Sanchez.
Dan, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The RMT has announced further strikes across Network Rail over the Christmas period. The union says rail staff will walk out from 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve until 6 a.m. on the 27th of December, with next week's strikes going ahead as planned. It said it will put the latest offer from Network Rail to its members with a recommendation to reject, claiming the deal will lead to unsafe practices. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says it's very disappointing the RMT hasn't played its part in continuing talks instead of holding strikes.
We've made sure that there was a new improved pay offer, which I think is fair to RMT members. What is disappointing is the fact that the RMT not only have not called off strikes, they've actually called more strikes for the Christmas period, and I would urge them to call those strikes off, put this pay deal to their members with a recommendation that it be accepted.
GB News understands an 8th child has died after contracting Strep A. It follows a 12-year-old child being the first secondary school student to have died after contracting the invasive infection. The UK Health Security Agency confirmed a single case was identified at Colf School in South London. Downing Street is urging parents to be on the lookout for symptoms and says there's no shortage of antibiotics. More than 850 cases were reported in the week starting the 14th of November, compared to over 180 for the same period last year. The government says changes to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will place local communities at the heart of the planning system. Further amendments will be set out by the Levelling Up Department tomorrow. The government is also set to abolish compulsory house building targets following requests from Conservative MPs aiming to protect the environment. Supporters of the proposals say this would also ensure local communities aren't forced to accept unwelcome development. Alongside new measures in the bill, the government will also give councils the power to refuse further planning permission. And the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has declared the beginning of the festive period in Parliament with the lighting of the Christmas tree. MPs, peers and parliamentary staff were joined by the rock choir who sang Christmas songs, including Carol of the Bells, which is based on a Ukrainian folk song. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. Straight to the front pages in the Metro, a scandal over travellers being sold tickets for thousands of so-called ghost trains that are being axed in secret. The paper also laments, oh no, here we go again, with a typically dramatic screenshot from Harry and Meghan's new reality show while asking, is it really just fake news? Answer to that, yes it is. The Daily Mail leads on fury at the Sussexes' Netflix claims. The paper reports on the furious backlash Harry and Meghan are receiving after their incendiary trailer that royal sources say are riddled with falsehoods. The Eye's headlines, antibiotics en masse for children in Strep A schools, penicillin or alternative antibiotics can be given to all children in primary schools where there has been a case following the death of an 8th child. My superstar panel back with me now. Esteemed Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the Eye newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, a brand new interview with Shamima Begum's husband has thrown fresh doubt over her claims that she was groomed and trafficked by ISIS. 10 days after arriving in Syria when she was just 15, Begum married Yagu Radiq, a 23-year-old Dutch convert, after they were matched by one of his friends. And speaking to Alan Duncan in a Mail Online exclusive, Radiq suggests that their marriage was consensual and that they shared, quote, some beautiful memories. Look.
We agreed upon conditions of marriage.
Which were?
Basically, she asked for some freedoms.
Right, okay.
Yeah, which I agreed to give her.
What were them freedoms?
Going shopping, seeing her friends, very, very basic stuff.
So, you were happy?
Yes, I was very happy.
Shamima, happy?
I hope so, yeah.
Radiq gave that interview from custody in northern Syria, but said he wants to be reunited with Begum and for them to have more children. The couple previously had 3 children together, all of whom died from illness because of their despicable life choices. So, I mean, Carol Malone, I think this interview from her hubby smashes to pieces her story once more.
Completely paints a picture of marital bliss. According to him, the two of them were baking cakes together and selling them. Of course, you know, this hearing, all the evidence in this hearing, and they're saying that she was trafficked. Her lawyers said they had overwhelming evidence. How did they get that evidence, I wonder? Because security services here say they're trying to get any evidence of any crimes that were committed in Syria by ISIS, wherever. It's impossible to get that evidence now. But more importantly, the court case last week and this week is not about whether or not she was trafficked. It's irrelevant whether she was trafficked. The case is about whether she poses a threat to national security. And our security services here say she does. What's the point of having security services if you don't listen to what they say? A guy called Neil Basso, who was a former county terror chief, he says returning women jihadis are a massive threat to this country. I think, to me, it's just astonishing that we're even talking about this. This girl left this country, whether she was trafficked or not when she got there, I don't care, I don't believe it for a second. But she left this country at a time where we were seeing beheadings live on TV. She left when we saw men being burned alive in cages. She left when we were reading reports about women and children being buried alive. And she left this country then to join this murderous death cult. You know, and maybe she was young to make that decision, but you know, sometimes in this life, you have to accept that you make a decision that will change your life entirely forever. And she made one of those decisions, and it was a bad one. And, you know, and we're still hearing, I mean, there's lots of evidence that has come out, some believed to have been from the CIA, that she wasn't just this little wife at home bringing up the babies. She actually was supposed to be an enforcer in the ISIS morality police.
Sewing the suicide bomb vests.
She was sewing vests onto people so they couldn't get out of them. She swept up severed heads. This is not... There was even a report, I think, in the CIA evidence that said she walked around with a Kalashnikov strapped across her chest. So, no, this woman should not... If she comes back into this...
I've spoken to a jihadi bride before on this show, Benjamin, who did return here. And at the very least, she tried to get out of her situation the moment that she was there. Begum didn't. Begum waited till ISIS had fallen. It's
too late, yeah.
She waited until ISIS had blown up British children at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester before she decided to bring her sob story. And to me, it is a sob story. I think the husband disproves what she's saying and she should not be allowed back. Why am I wrong?
Well, first of all, I think it's completely unethical and wrong to take the word of a man who basically implies it in there when he says, I let her have certain freedoms. There is considerable concern and suspicion that that man, the ISIS husband seen there, is in fact a paedophile. He was 23 when he married this child, and there is concern among other behaviours that he's done out in Syria that he is in fact a paedophile. And I think the idea that you should take his word at face value is unethical and a mistake, and that you should have that undermine her argument. The other thing...
Not taking it face value,
why should we believe hers?
Well,
Why should we take her word?
The other thing that we know for a fact now, because Canadian intelligence services admitted it, is that she was trafficked from Turkey into Syria with the knowledge of British and Canadian intelligence services.
But she knew what she was doing.
She knew where she was going.
But it was
before she got there.
She didn't leave Bethnal Green to go to Turkey. You accept that?
Yeah, I know it, because I put questions. I put questions to Shamima Begum through Andrew Drury, the man in your pictures.
She left to join ISIS
earlier this year.
So she left to join ISIS.
So I've asked, Begum about how she got there, and she says it's remarkably easy. So that puts the questions about the services we have at the airports when you've got kids flying off to do that.
Yeah, so how can you say she was trafficked then if you concede that she made a choice?
Because we know, first of all, she was brainwashed as a teenager.
Oh, come on.
And then the British state knew via Canada that she'd been put in there. And then the third thing is that there is...
No, come on, let's take you on that one. This girl was an A student. She was 15 years old, but she was an A student.
Very smart.
You're implying that she's stupid, that she was brainwashed. She's seeing people being beheaded on telly, and she thinks that's an OK thing to happen.
Well, actually...
She's not stupid.
Terrorists tend to have above-average intelligence. They tend to be very bright people. That's how they can be so manipulative.
Belinda, and surely that's why we cannot allow her to step foot in Britain ever again.
I'm really sorry, Benjamin, but this is such an insult to the victims of real human trafficking. I work with a charity in London that deals with women who are forced, who are blackmailed, who are drugged, who are imprisoned, who are kidnapped. There is no way
they don't
that
go
is
and buy
the
a plane
same.
ticket.
Yeah, and we've got to stop, making these terms like traffic now meaning just anyone who does anything naughty and is young. And the only time Shamima showed any remorse was when her baby died at the very end of everything. She's never shown remorse of what she took part in, and her husband has also reinforced the claim that she went there voluntarily because he was arrested 10 days after they were married. So she was on her own in the house without him, not imprisoned. Secondly, he confirmed that she was in touch with her family by phone while she was there. This is not the sign of a trafficked, kidnapped, brainwashed woman.
I mean, I know, having learned it from when I put my questions to Shamima, that she still has Twitter, she still has Facebook, and she's able to communicate with people back home. So she has access to the outside world. What I'd also say, though, is that the question isn't about whether she has done heinous things. I certainly would be of the viewpoint that she has. It seems incredibly unlikely.
But the problem is we can't try her for them in this country.
The point
so she would be out on the streets of Bethnal Green within months.
Do you think that she should be tried for her crimes in Syria? Do you
hang on, let me
yes
finish my point. She should be in a British prison on our
But it's not going to happen because you didn't commit the crimes here. They can't collect evidence.
That is something that the law...
What crime can she be convicted of in this country? None. Because no evidence can be brought to this country or to be found to convict her of anything.
But if you join a prescribed group in this country, like a far-right group, you can go to prison for that. And I think the law should extend...
She would be in prison.
ISIS.
She would be in prison for a matter of months, not for her crimes in Syria. If anything, so she would be free on the streets of Bethnal Green.
You have no right to forgive her sins.
Prove that she has committed in Syria. We can't prove it.
I'm not saying...
But what we can prove is that she left here to join this cult. And I think what really annoys me is if she comes back here, one MI5, which is already overstretched, is going to have to watch over 24/7 for the rest of her life. That costs thousands every month. Moreover, she's never going to get a job, so the state is going to have to take care of her every day of her life. Why the hell should we?
I'm not here to justify what she did. What she did is heinous and repugnant. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But I have to say that if this was a white middle-class girl who had made these mistakes...
She would not have been...
What about Jihadi Jack, who we have never allowed back because he had Canadian citizenship? A white British man with white parents. There was just as much of a moral outrage, and he will never be allowed back into this country. This is not an issue of race. This is not an issue of race. Because if it was an issue of race, we would not have allowed Jihadi Jack back. Belinda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, thank you so much, and do so much, because coming up, as the debunking of their imminent Netflix reality show begins, can anyone trust a word the Sussexes say? My superstar panel return to debate that. Maybe we'll have agreement on this one, actually. Plus, there's more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in the Media Buzz at 10:30. But first, as over 50,000 members of the public sign a petition in support, should the palace reinstate Lady Susan Hussey, given what we now know about her racism accuser Ngozi Fulani, the author, journalist and high society insider Petronella Wyatt. She's known Lady Hussey, by the way, since the age of 18, says this is not a racist woman, so she's going to come to her defence live in the studio straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Now, it's been nearly a week since the late Queen Elizabeth II's closest ally, Lady Susan Hussey, was unceremoniously exiled by the Windsors after being accused of racism for a misjudged comment to a black charity owner, Ngozi Fulani, at a Buckingham Palace event. As you know, I was one of the only voices in the media that stood up to the portrayal of Hussey as an irredeemable bigot and Fulani as a complete innocent, exposing how the charity boss is not only, let's be honest, a proud member of the Sussex squad, having accused King Charles and Queen Camilla of domestically abusing Meghan, but professionally backed by the Marxist and financially dubious BLM movement. So while the likes of the BBC and Sly News happily turned a blind eye to those revelations, the British public haven't, with more than 52,000 Brits signing a petition for Lady Hussey to be reinstated as a lady-in-waiting. Now, one of her biggest supporters is the author, journalist and society figure Petronella Wyatt, who has known Lady Hussey since the age of 18 and has defended her publicly against racism claims. Petronella believes it's simply wrong to punish one of the monarchy's most loyal servants for being a product of a distant time. I'm delighted to say she joins me now in the studio. I mean, Petronella, the first thing to say on this before we get to Lady Hussey specifically, it has been despicable and disgusting to see the conspiracy of silence around the story. For some reason with this story, there's only one side. No one is allowed to present Lady Hussey's side.
Exactly. I mean, there is an assumption now that if you are woke, you are right. And this is a disgusting rejection of all the great things we stand for in this country, which is essentially fair play and both sides of the argument. She was, this poor lady was unceremoniously bundled out of the palace after over 60 years of loyal service. No one bothered to investigate Miss Fulani's claims or her agenda. We know she has form on these issues because she's a Meghan supporter, and also she's tweeted continuously about the racism in the royal family. And she very possibly illegally recorded the conversation.
Because how else did she get this transcript?
Exactly. It was so exact.
So you think it's possible she went to Buckingham Palace wired up?
It is very possible that she went to Buckingham Palace to try and prove a point.
And Lady Hussey is the unwilling victim in this. And all of a sudden, internationally now, this woman is described as a racist. Now tell me, you know Lady Hussey, you've known her since you were 18, and you say that if Lady Hussey is a racist, then you are
I'm an ornamental fountain. I know. In fact, she once called me out because I wrote an article for The Spectator criticising the Italians, and she said it was unkind and slightly racist.
So she's someone who stands up against racism.
Exactly. And for example, I mean, she was with the Queen for decades. She met every ethnic group from the Commonwealth. She has many friends who are black and coloured. She is not a racist. She has an old school manner and she's slightly deaf, which means that she talks slightly louder, as deaf people do, and also her kind of head girl manner is quite kind of breezy. But I saw nothing wrong with her line of questioning. Also, people completely misunderstood the reference to your people. When she said, where your people from, for that generation, it means nothing derogatory. It means where your family from.
Because this is apparently something that's asked very often at these royal events. Now, you tell me, because I don't go to these things.
Course,
people say, where are you from? That's just a question.
She's a courtier. She needs background because she has to go back to when it was the Queen. She had to go back to the Queen.
Or in this case, Camilla.
Or Camilla.
Queen
in this
Camilla.
case, exactly, Queen Camilla, the Queen Consort, and brief her.
And say, this lady's from this charity, she's from this country.
And even because I've been to those functions, so I've been asked, because I have a Hungarian mother, I've been asked about my family, my background, where my mother actually came from. She was a refugee from Hungary during the Cold War. To me, these are normal questions.
So they want a bit of background. What about the claim from Lady, from Fulani,
Miss Fulani.
From that Fulani that Lady Hussey touched her hair, and she described that as a form of abuse?
I do not believe that for a second, because I know Lady Hussey. Lady Hussey would rather die than be informal and touch somebody's hair. It took her 10 years of knowing me before she even kissed me on a cheek.
Because this is a very proper woman in terms of...
Incredibly proper. And there was no witness to this hair-touching episode. No one has come forward and confirmed it. And I do not believe it. I would stake my life that she on the fact that she didn't do that.
Now, you're very concerned about Lady Hussey. Now, obviously, there's been some reports over the weekend suggesting...
I am. She's devastated. She's an 82-year-old widow. I think what Miss Villani did, it was so hypocritical because she said she didn't want to name and shame anybody, but she posted the whole thing on Twitter with Susan Hussey's initials. You don't do that unless... You want the individual. Yeah, and she's been hypocritical ever since, because even yesterday she was tweeting saying, no individual's to blame, I didn't want to hurt any individual, it's the institution. She put a widow's initials out there. And I can tell you, because I've spoken to Susan Hussey's friends, that this woman's life is ruined.
Oh, that's so...
She is broken-hearted. She won't go out. She's probably the subject of death threats, because you know how social media works now. I mean, what Miss Villani did was so uncharitable, and she's the head of a charity, so cruel and so hypocritical.
I mean, that breaks my heart, because the other thing that a lot of people have forgotten about Lady Hussey is she is still in the depths of despair about the loss of the Queen. I mean, outside of the loss of her husband, who she, of course... lost some time ago. The Queen had been her rock, and that'd been each other's rock. And the fact that she was the person chosen by the Queen on the day of Prince Philip's funeral
she
to
was
be in the car
William's
with
godmother. These were not only...
Do you feel let down by William and Charles too? Because
absolutely.
they immediately gave
If the Queen was still alive, this wouldn't have happened. The Queen would not have given in to the, woke karate social media clamour. It would have been dealt with in a more measured, private way. She wouldn't have thrown her loyal servant and friend to the wolves.
And there's a risk to the royal family by giving into the social media.
Of course
mob,
it
isn't
is.
there? Because they've done this once now. So what
Then
happens the next time?
Every time
and what
there's
about
a
the next
false
time
allegation?
the accusation is against a member of the family?
Exactly. I mean, it's a very stupid strategy. It's giving hostages support. It bodes very ill for the future. And I also think it is unspeakably cruel on human
Do you
terms.
think Lady Hussey should be reinstated? Because I really do.
Of course she should, but whether she would want to be... I mean, she's heartbroken, Dan. She's heartbroken.
I know, and this is an 83-year-old woman, I think.
I know.
I think the whole thing has been a disgrace.
I mean, our whole life is literally ruined. Her whole life.
I know, and this is now the scandal that she will be remembered for,
Of
rather than
course.
6 years of service. And by the way, I know this is a privileged woman, but I think we should point out she never accepted a penny.
No,
from the
and she
royal
lives
family
very
for her work.
frugally. She's not some gazillionaire, living in some fancy mansion or whatever. She's a very frugal woman. She's devoted her whole life to public service.
I know, and this is how we treat a member of
I know. I mean, it makes me so angry that... and so angry that no one except basically you and I stood up for her.
I know, but it also unfortunately shows where the MSM in this country
It
is
really
at, too.
does.
So thank God for your peace.
Well, thank
and for speaking
God
out
for
tonight
you.
to Veteran Alan Wyatt, the Author Journalist Society figure. Great to have you here. But coming up, as he blames care home staff for spreading COVID to the vulnerable in his pandemic diaries, is Matt Hancock only interested in covering his back for his unforgivable failures as Health Secretary? I take a deep dive on that with anti-lockdown voice Matt Letizia at 10:40. But first, more royal news. The Sussexes have declared war on the monarchy. And as many keen royal insiders have pointed out, the truth with their new Netflix trailer. So can Harry and Meghan be trusted? My superstar panel return to debate that in the Media Buzz Part 2, straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Loads of front pages are in. Let's get straight to them. The Sun leads with Sussex lies and videotape. Great headline. Reporting that images chosen to show Meghan being hounded by the press were anything but. We'll have more on that in a mo. Plus, England ace Raheem Sterling says he won't return to Qatar until he can ensure his family's safety after a terrifying raid on his Sussex mansion. Keep calm and carry on is the headline in the Daily Mirror as England captain Harry Kane steps in to give a morale boost to his teammates following the loss of Sterling. The Guardian reports Rishi Sunak has been forced to back down over his compulsory house building targets following pressure from Tory MPs. The move comes in the middle of a national housing crisis and will heighten concerns the PM is too weak to take on unruly backbenchers. The Times leads on the shocking revelation that 1 in 7 people are being denied a GP appointment, with over 2 million facing wait times of over a month. Labour has responded by vowing to train more doctors and nurses to tackle the crisis. Also on the front page, the developing news that rail unions will bring yet more misery to the public by planning to walk out on Christmas Eve and only returning on the 27th of December. And on the Daily Telegraph front page, Sunak abandons housing targets. They also report the PM is poised to back down on the ban on onshore wind farms after 34 Tories, including Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, demanded it be lifted. Get the popcorns in, folks, declares the Star, slamming that their royal shinesses are planning to trash the royal family. And of course, I love the Daily Star because they're sticking to Harry and Meghan's request that they just stay a private couple despite having a Netflix reality show. We're going to talk about this now with my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. So, I actually think this upcoming Netflix documentary should be listed under fiction if their latest trailer released today is anything to gone by. They've been busted using fake paparazzi scenes that were actually from a Harry Potter film premiere and Katie Price court case, plus a picture of Harry avoiding photographers that conveniently cropped out his ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy. It's from 2007, folks. So here's a reminder of this broken record tale of victimhood released by Netflix today.
There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race. It's a dirty game. pain and suffering of women marrying into this institution, this feeding frenzy.
I realized they're never going to protect you.
I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself. No one knows the full truth. We know the full truth.
Worst of all about that is the fantasy of the royal family planting press stories against the Duke and Duchess of Warwick. In fact, Buckingham Palace staff spent many days, weeks and months actually keeping damaging stories out of the press on their behalf. I should know, actually, as it was my world exclusive story on the Queen warning Meghan about her treatment of staff and her wedding tiara around November 2018 that finally saw Palace courtiers admit defeat and realise actually this stuff was going to get out because so many people were talking about it. It was only Meghan's behaviour, which, let's remember, included multiple bullying allegations by her close aides, that prompted the coverage. Oh, and by the way, yesterday the president of Harry and Meghan's Archwell organisation became the 13th staff member to quit working for the couple in just a few years. They insist it was a mutual party. They always say that, don't they? Carol Malone. I mean, this is a declaration of war on the royal family, but it already seems to be a declaration of war based on a tissue of lies.
It is astonishing, you know. And I think what's astonished me more than anything, I was just reading quotes from various palace officials today, and they're using phrases like, it'll all blow over soon, and, you know, what have they got to say after this? Are these people nuts? You know, this is the part of the problem is that they have not hid back at Meghan and Harry. Meghan
They're not
and Harry,
being aggressive enough.
If anyone says anything about them, they're straight into court. They're making them prove with evidence what's been said. Why aren't the royal family doing this? Why aren't they hitting back? It's because they don't hit back that Harry and Meghan are allowed to continue with these fabrications that they tell. It is outrageous. And, you know, I was watching the photographs of the paparazzi there. I was around, I was reporting when she was in this country, and she was protected the entire time. She never got close to a paparazzi pack because she was surrounded by security guards the whole time. She never had to dodge them like Diana did. And the only reason Diana had to do it in the end was because her security was dispensed with. Meghan and Harry always had security. So all this is absolute nonsense. And this idea that they're crying 2 years after the event. Meghan was in this country for less than 2 years. And she can still be moved to tears today. I think if the palace want to stop this, they're mad, because this is a 6-week series. The repercussions of this are going to go on for months, if not years. Look at the accusations in the
and we've got Harry's book.
And we've got Harry's book.
I do agree with you there, Carol. Actually, I really do think that the royal family have been naive throughout, because they have to start taking this seriously, because Harry and Meghan, I think, at least for the next year, are going to pose a real threat to
Can I just say before we move on that, I thought that after the Queen's passing, I thought they were waiting while she was still alive not to do anything, and I thought that after her passing, they maybe would pursue them then, because I'm sure the Queen wouldn't have wanted that. But they're not doing it. They've got this attitude, it'll all blow over.
It's actually Charles who is the one holding back. The Queen, I think, was...
Well, Charles needs to...
But Charles keeps thinking down in his soul, oh, my son doesn't really want to destroy me.
His son does.
I'm afraid, Charles, your son does want to destroy you, just like your daughter-in-law destroyed her own father. They have form for this. Benjamin Butterworth, are you standing by your fellow woke-topians, Harry and Meghan? Do you still love these two? Do you still think they're a great example of what it means to be woke these days?
I mean, look, there's good news for taxpayers, because we need never have paid for Frogmore Cottage, because I think Harry and Meghan are living rent-free in your mind forever. You are completely obsessed with this couple.
You don't think this is a big story?
I think it's a big story, but I'm utterly tired.
Here's your newspaper. Here's your newspaper on the front page. There.
And I think it'll be of interest to lots of people what they say. But generally, I think people are exhausted about the whole circus.
They're trying to destroy the royal family.
Whether it's tedious opportunists like you who will tear apart Meghan Markle for anything she says, whether it's...
I'll tell you who the tedious opportunist is. It's the Duchess of Sussex herself, who had an amazing opportunity to make real change from within the royal family, and instead decided, you know what mattered to her? Money, money, money.
Well, I mean, I think that Meghan Markle is a private person, as is...
Are you joking? Benjamin, how can you say that with a straight face?
She's
She's a private person.
Now you're joking. Now I know.
6 weeks worth of documentary.
Person I've ever come across.
The only thing we haven't
They're filming her pretending to cry in moments of deep pain.
Do you not
What
remember?
is private about
Do you not
Meghan
remember?
But to
Markle?
coin a phrase, leave Meghan alone.
This is the woman.
She doesn't deserve this.
This is the woman who said she could bring on a tear and a heartbeat, and by God, she's been doing it over this. But you know what really upsets me in America now? You know, when Kate and Will's went to do the trip this week in the US, Americans now believe that they're racist.
Some do.
A lot of them do, you know.
The Democrats.
They believe that they're
it's down
racist.
party
And
line.
this is all on one unfounded allegation by Meghan Markle. That the royal family
I want to
Linda, come in here.
Yeah, I want to point out something because, you know, at the beginning, I think quite a few people were forgiving to Harry. He's mentally vulnerable. He was just trying to protect his family. I've been proved so wrong. The last 3 years of relentless attacks, for me, have had a very sinister result. It has incited and inspired wave after wave of race baiters in this country, anti-British, anti-white race baiters here, to target the royal family and our institutions. This has all come from Harry and Meghan. No, and I don't blame
People
Meghan.
like Lady Susan Hussey are the race baiters. They're the ones that are getting
such a lie.
it wrong, not
That is
Meghan.
lie. I lived next to Lady Hussey for 3 years. We were close neighbours. She's the most incredibly humble, kind lady. I used to do up her dress, and I didn't even know she was the lady in waiting until a year after we met. She is not a racist, and she has been thrown to the dogs by a race baiter who has been emboldened by Harry and Meghan's fierce attack on our institution, country, and people. Remember, Harry has always said he's not liked England.
I mean, Benjamin, do you agree with Ngozi Fulani suggesting that King Charles and Camilla were guilty of domestic violence against Meghan?
I mean, she was using that terminology to describe the way that she felt threatened by them. And I think it's probably not the best use of words, but the point that she's making is that, you know, they have been on the receiving end of institutional racism. And the truth is that when Lady Hussey made those remarks, they're not asked to white people, and that's why it was a racially problematic comment.
I'm asked all the time where I'm from, as I said last week.
I'm sorry, my grandparents moved to this country from a different one, from Canada. I've never been asked where I'm from.
Have a bit of a funny voice, and believe me, you're asked all the time.
But you were born in a different country, so that's different.
But why is
she is British and from Hancock.
But I'm also British.
Of course you are.
I'm also British.
Of course you are, but she has
why
a
is it not racist to ask me where I'm from?
You have an accent, and so
she
you
was
naturally
at
ask.
a global
And she was
event.
dressed in an African
she was
dress.
at a global event dressed in African dress, and she has changed her name to an African name. It is a perfectly sensible question to say, where are you from?
I want to move on to another woke favourite. Angela Rayner turned into Angela Raver this weekend, with the Labour deputy throwing herself about the state of the fundraiser, despite slamming Matt Hancock for undermining his position with an unbecoming I'm a Celebrity appearance mere weeks ago. DJ Ange didn't seem concerned that she could be putting off photos herself with her big fish, little fish cardboard box. Now, Mail on Sunday commentator Dan Hodges was among Rayner's critics, suggesting the sweaty display would, quote, turn off people who still have doubts Labour are serious people with a serious plan for leading the country. So maybe if she keeps Avon at large, Rayner could end up shrinking the Labour lead. Now, Benjamin, again, you think this is brilliant to have Angela Rayner acting this way?
Well, first of all, you know, I won't be lectured on competence in public office by a man that said Liz Truss was going to be the best Prime Minister this country had seen for 30 years. If anyone isn't serious in office, it's the woman you backed.
Well, I obviously completely stand by everything I said. The establishment were out to get her in a globalist coup, and we'll have that debate another day. And look at where the country's at now. Look at where the country's at now.
Yeah, look at where the country's at now. I'm not sure that helps you. But the point about this, and I think the context is really important. First of all, it's a Saturday night. It's not like she was skipping a vote to do it. But it was a fundraiser for homeless people in Greater Manchester, where she is a
Carol, you say this is unbecoming.
And so what's wrong with raising money for the homeless?
I think this is totally unbecoming. If this was the first time that we were talking about her doing something like bizarre, it would be fine. But it isn't. This is the woman who, you know, she was screaming that all Tories were scum. This is the woman who said she wasn't at that fateful meeting in Durham with Keir Starmer. But hey, it turned out she was. This is the woman who was screaming about misogyny against the Tories. Tories when they accused her
What's that got to do with this?
Hang on a second, crossing her legs Sharon Stone style, when in fact it was her who put the story out in the first place. This woman is a loose cannon. She's a loose cannon.
Well, did you want her as deputy PA?
No, not at all. I do
mean,
not like her politics in the slightest, and I agree with Carol. Her behaviour when she ranted about the Tories being vile scum and all the other things, they are far more important than her having a boogie on a Saturday night for a good cause. However, I'd say there are totally double standards. If Rishi or any Tory had done this, the left would be in uproar.
Imagine the left would go berserk. She is not a serious person for a serious job.
Yeah, look how he Boris and he's
our deputy leader.
I take it in that case that Raver-in-Chief Michael Gove, you also believe shouldn't be in office.
I thought he looked ridiculous, frankly, but that's not the point. He's not.
I've never heard you say that.
Oh, no, we played the video and severely criticised him.
I think Michael Gove and Anthony
for a very obvious midlife crisis.
I want more ravers in Parliament.
He is not deputy leader. She is deputy leader for the party.
She's got no power in Labour, I can tell you that.
This is the closest the Labour have ever been to government, and that's what our deputy leader looks like. Unbelievable.
Do stand by, because coming up, do Britain's pensioners just have it too good? Look, I don't think that, but one of my superstar panellists thinks so, and I'm sure it will annoy you when they reveal why, as today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass nominees are revealed very soon. But first, as he blames care home staff for spreading COVID to the vulnerable in his pandemic diaries, is Matt Hancock only interested in covering his own back for his unforgivable failures as Health Secretary? Campaigner Matt Letizia uncancelled on that. And this shock U-turn from Witty and Valance on lockdown harms. Letis live straight after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Accuser, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And fresh from his bogus rebrand as a man of the people on I'm a Celebrity, Matt Hancock will stop at nothing in his attempts to rewrite history, as evidenced by the serialisation of his book. Extracted exclusively in the Daily Mail, Hancock makes a string of diary entries during his time as Health Secretary amid the COVID outbreak, many of which are clearly aimed at covering his own back. I'd say a lot of revisionist history is going on. For example, on his reckless decision to discharge elderly people from hospitals into care homes without testing them, Hancock has deviously tried to shift the blame onto care workers himself. So here he is, 16th of July 2020. He says the main takeaway is that the virus has primarily been brought in by staff, not by elderly people who've been discharged from hospital. 3 months before that, he also accused care home bosses of being too slow to grasp the fact they needed to, quote, test. And that barefaced revisionism comes just days after the professors of doom, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, said that thanks to their draconian measures, Britain is in for, quote, a prolonged period of COVID excess deaths. Predictably, though, they stopped short of admitting that lockdowns had caused more harm than good to the British people. Well, I'm joined now by the former England footballer and social commentator Matt Le Tissier. And Matt, come on, what is going on here? So much revisionism from these three blokes.
It's quite embarrassing, quite frankly, Dan. Anybody who reads that nonsense and thinks that's exactly what happened needs to take a long, hard look at themselves. No mention of Midazolam from Matt Hancock, surprisingly. That was a strange one. But a couple of mentions about how tough it was on his family, which I found quite galling, considering what he was doing with his mistress during all of this. So, yeah, not for me. Don't believe a word of it. Complete revisionism, trying to cover his back at every opportunity and being aided and abetted by Mr. Vallance and Mr. Whitty.
Well, I know the Whitty and Vallance thing is extraordinary, isn't it, Matt? Because, you know, when we first crossed paths, it was because we were two of the high-profile folk who were calling out Vallance and Whitty. And it was really difficult to do that at the time, Matt. I mean, we were called granny killers. We were called conspiracy theories. We were saying back then in 2020 exactly what Vallance and Whitty say today. So they were either lying or they have only realised the truth now and they're trying to cover up their tracks.
This is definitely a cover-up of the tracks, because there were enough people speaking out and warning people of the consequences of what was going to be happening. And I'm sorry, that's exactly what happened. And they're going to say, oh, we didn't really know the severity of the disease at the time. We panicked. But there was a lot of evidence around even early on from the Diamond Princess cruise ship, which was available very early, which they could have taken a lot from, decided to ignore that data completely, and went along their own path in a way that was just a way to disrupt our society in a way that you could not imagine. And when people warned about it, as you say, we were looked upon as granny killers and COVID deniers.
And Matt, it wasn't like we were ignoring scientists, by the way. We were looking to people like Sunitra Gupta and Carl Hennigan, eminent professors at Oxford University. I mean, Sunitra Gupta, one of the world's top epidemiologists, and they were ignored by Whitty and Vallance.
They were indeed. And, you know, you look back on it now and you can only think, I can only think that this was done deliberately. They were not following the science. They were following a preconceived plan. In my opinion, because there was too much information available to them, and they can, for all they want, they can turn around and say, well, you know, there's going to be this period of excess deaths because of the measures that we took. Again, that for me looks like a cover-up, because that can then encompass any death, so they can just say, oh, well,
and then
it's not the vaccine
it's
that's done
lockdown.
that. It's not the vaccine, it's just anything else that we did, but definitely not the vaccine.
Yeah, and it's all lockdown. Well, look, Matt, there's so much to unpick. We're obviously going to do it over the weeks to come with you, but so good to talk tonight. Matt Le Tissier, and Matt will be back next Monday night. Thank you so much. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Carol Malone, who's your GB nominee?
OK, mine's Kate, Princess of Wales. This woman's never put a foot wrong. She and Wills had to fly to the US last week on the US tour. After that manufactured race storm, and as the evil witch that Meghan had portrayed her as. She's played a blinder out there. She's been dazzling. Her and Wills have done a fantastic job, as they always do. She should comfort herself that, you know, she'll still be dazzling people 20 years from now, while Meghan will be a footnote.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
My greatest Britain is Shamima Begum's legal team, because they are standing up for international law and the right of her to remain a British citizen, to be in a British prison, preferably.
Wow.
Oh, goodness me. Belinda DeLucy. Go.
My greatest Brit has to be England's football team yesterday for scoring 3 awesome goals and sending the country into a state of euphoria for the next few days while we look forward to playing France.
Well, I'm going to go with the Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, as tonight's Greatest Britain. She's going to need some love over the next couple of weeks. Carol Malone, your nominee for Union Jackass.
Mine's Angela Rayner. I'd have her every week if I could, but I can't. Anyway, she did this DJ set this week. I just don't think this woman is fit to be deputy leader of this country.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
My Union Jackass is the pensioners of Britain. They're about to get a 10% rise because of this triple lock. A third of pensioners in this country are millionaires.
No, this is rubbish.
As of 2020,
that is rubbish.
It's not rubbish. As of 2024, the average pensioner will have a bigger disposable income than the average person in their 20s. This madness.
Can I just say, 2 million pensioners live on nothing but the state.
So I'm in total shock. And also, Benjamin, they have worked their entire life.
Our poor old
people. They didn't pay for the pensions they're taking out, and this needs to stop.
This is outrageous. Could you live on 200 quid a week? Because that's what most of them do.
No, he couldn't.
When nurses are refused to
No, he
rise,
couldn't. Believe me, one item of his clothing costs 200 quid. One dinner at one of his posh London restaurants with his media mates costs 200 quid. Belinda DeLucy,
mine has to be Prince Harry for his relentless attacks on his family, our 1,000-year-old monarchy and the British people. It's becoming deeply cruel now, and I'm sorry, but he gets it from me tonight.
No, do you know what? I actually think that's a fair enough choice, and I am going to go with Prince Harry as tonight's Union Jackass. I fear what's to come on Thursday, actually, and I fear for Harry and the repercussions that he will have to face in the years to come. He'll end up regretting this, believe me. Belinda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, great to have you back, and Carol Malone, thank you so much too. I'm, of course, back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Headliners is up next, so thank you for your company tonight. Good night.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So